TopVelocity.net, going to do a biometric analysis of Austin with the ProPlayai application. It's a great app, great interface for 2D video-based biomechanics. ProPlayai.com. In this analysis here, we're going to go through some critical things like kinematic sequencing, and we can really see how things are timing and accelerating. So let's take Austin out of leg lift, and let's take him just as he loads into just before leg drive. Okay, so you can see he's staying back well, but it's almost too far. You can see this trunk is leaning really far back here. What that can do is it can put that hip in such hip abduction that it's hard to move through flexion extension, which is how we drive the pelvis into rotation. So he's so far loaded into abduction that ultimately he's going to inhibit his ability to really flex and extend the hip or drive hip rotation. So he needs to be a little bit more vertical upright. So let's see how he moves into front foot strike. So there is an attempt as he opens to drive and push and propel hip rotation. But you can see when he lands, not much, the hips are slightly rotated, not great hip rotation in front foot strike. This is where we can look at the kinematic sequence. So the kinematic sequence is going to look at pelvis rotation, torso rotation, elbow extension, shoulder internal rotation. Now there's these faded lines here. Here's one. This is foot plant. There's one here. This is maximum external rotation as labeled up here. And then this one's ball release. As we go through, we can see which one of these segments is accelerating the fastest. The fastest is going to be at the top in this order. You can see when we get to front foot strike, the pelvis is rotating the fastest. After front foot strike, it continues to rotate. That's normal. It should be getting close to peaking. And as you can see, we don't see, it's slowly peaking, but really not fast enough. Then the shoulder internal rotation after front foot strike is starting to pick up. I'm kind of interested to see why that's happening. Let's see, here's front foot strike. Oh, it's because his elbow is so high going into front foot strike, and then as he turns, it's weird to say that there's internal rotation speeds there, but could be because the elbow is so high up above the shoulder, which is a concern. When you see the elbow go this high above the shoulder, you get into hyperabduction. It can create impingements in the shoulder. I get more concerned when that's at full front foot strike. So you can see it landing, it drops a little bit, which is better, but definitely too high elbow position going in the front foot, which is risky for the shoulder. But you can see this pelvis rotation is still peaking. It's at 280, and then now it's 286, 290. It's still peaking, 370. It's like we're peaking all the way into maximum, or past maximum external rotation, still peaking. We're almost all the way into ball release, and we're still peaking. Okay, so it looks like pelvis rotation gets dropping. It's because the other things are coming in. And here's its peak all the way out here, way too late in the motion. So what's happening is the hips are peaking way, 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 way out here. That's not good. Studies actually show if your pelvis is still peaking, are still accelerating in rotation after front foot strike, the upper body's less stable, therefore it's harder on the arm. So that peak acceleration of the hips needs to finish after front foot strike. Now let's look at torso rotation. So torso rotation, this is the next big one. After the pelvis should peak right here, now the torso rotation should come in. You can see the torso rotation peaking. We're going into maximum external rotation right here. Okay, torso rotation still peaking. We're going into pitch release right here. Torso rotation still peaking. After pitch release, torso rotation exploding after pitch release, all the way out here. So this is not usually common. Typically with hitters, you see very common torso rotation peaking after contact, ball contact. But with pitchers, torso rotation is supposed to be completed before pitch release. So we have some late torso rotation, which this is telling me that the sequence of energy, the amount of energy getting to front foot strike wasn't much. because there's a study that showed those pitchers that have less external rotation of the drive leg, they typically don't get as many rotational torsion forces into landing, so then they have to create that in the upper body. So when we're seeing all these late rotational movements from hip to torso, it's a late creation of energy. And if we go to pitch release, we can see something significant here. We can see the front leg trying to get extension, and then after it gets a lot of extension. So that's what it is. The front leg is actually creating more of the energy up the kinetic chain than the back leg, but it's creating it too late. That's why we're seeing the rotational forces happening so late. So we need to get the back leg to create those rotational forces, so the front leg doesn't have to do all the work, and ultimately, because it has less time, it has about 0.2 of a second, and then therefore it's behind. And all this great energy is being created after the throw. We want to get that in before the throw because it's the only way we're going to get it to the ball. And then you can see your shoulder instrumentation forces peaking negatively, which is, this is confusing me. I think it would be positive up to this point, and then it goes negative. But I'm not sure exactly how they're measuring that, so we won't go over that. The issues I see with the upper body, with the arm, besides the hyperabduction, is because at landing, another key flaw begins. Watch front knee position. It drifts forward. See the drift? So that means there was a late transfer of energy. That could be because the hips weren't fully rotated. You had that drift. That could be the front leg wasn't powerful enough to catch momentum quick enough. But at the same time, that stability comes a second late, or not a second, but a split second late, and it causes the trunk to jump slightly ahead. When the trunk jumps slightly ahead before the front knee stabilizes, it throws the arm out of sequence. So what happens is the trunk starts going early and the arm was waiting back, because the arm is ultimately waiting for the stability before it accelerates. The trunk wants to keep momentum or keep accelerating momentum. So the trunk went ahead when the arm stayed back because of the late stability of the front leg. And now you get what we call hyperangulation. As the trunk opens, you get the elbow trailing the shoulder, and that's hard on the arm. So it's another issue with the arm there due to the lack of the late timing of front leg stability. And then I do like how everything eventually finishes. It's just finishing late and energies moving up late to the ball, and we're losing a lot of that energy. So I think there's a lot of things here Austin can work on and improve to the fixing the trunk, coming out of leg lift, to getting more propulsion out of the drive leg into landing to peak the hips earlier. Ultimately, that will help front leg stabilize earlier, and then we'll see a better transfer of energy up the kinetic chain where the energy isn't peaking after release, it's peaking before release, which is a lot healthier for the arm and a lot more effective for velocity.